Good day. So for this lesson, we are going to explain for our first lesson for the chemistry 2, for your general chemistry 2, which is intermolecular forces. So we have here a structure where you always done in your chemistry 1. So we have here the Lewis structure of the CH4. So in your chemistry 1, you have identified how to make the structural formula of a compound. See with here, the ammonia. So for this time, we're going, as you can see on the picture, we have here solid, liquid, and gas. So mostly this picture shows you an elementary ask or question of your teacher. So the teacher always asks, what is the difference of the molecules of the three different states of matter? So we have solid, liquid, and gas. So in your elementary, you should say, Ma'am, in solid, they are closely packed together. We have vibrations. While liquid, you have small spaces on it and a little movement. And gas, they are freely to go or freely to move. So that is an elementary way of explaining the states of matter. So tama po. So that's the reason that is the first intro of intermolecular forces. So there's something to do with the molecules or the movement and attraction of the molecules. As you can see from this next slide, we have here four pictures that shows you the meaning or the word that best explains for this intermolecular force or for this first lesson. So in this picture, and the first picture, as you see, it's like under the subject of entrepreneurship, where you can see three shoppers that attracted to one. So maybe may sale. So may sale kaya nagiging attracted sila. The second one is a picture of a boy and a girl with a heart. So alam niyo na ibig sabihin yan. It means you have a relationship. Then the third, so I think it explains from the physics. We have opposites attract. So like charges repel, opposites attract. So in chemistry, this is how we explain the attraction of the molecules. So we have here, as you can see, this is the partially positive and partially negative. That delta type, it's called partially. So pag nakikita niyo siya, tawag dyan ay partially positive, partially negative. So what do you mean by partially positive? Meaning it is not totally positive and not totally negative. So somehow they become positive and sometimes they became negative. So that is explains on your covalent bonding under polar and non-polar. So next, let us define intermolecular forces. So in intermolecular forces, we have here a definition where are attractive forces that act between molecules. Let me emphasize this one. Between molecules. So meaning, from this picture, if there is a two compound, ayan, dalawang compound, and this is the attraction that explains for the intermolecular forces. From the word inter means between molecules. So it means it can be a bond or an attraction between H2O and NaCl or water and a salt. So ganun po siya. And that is the intermolecular forces. There is another one. So baka magkalito-lito po tayo. When we say intramolecular forces, it is the bond that holds atoms, same with that makes compounds. So it means bond that holds atoms. So we can somehow say that it is a bond within the molecules. So dito po, within the molecules. Okay, so if this hydrogen and a chlorine in a HCl hydrochloride bond, so yung bond between hydrogen and chlorine that pertains for the intramolecular forces. And this bond that pertains that shows between two hydrogen chloride, it is under intermolecular forces. So, ulitin ko po, pag sinabi natin intermolecular forces, it is a bond between two molecules or two compounds. And when we say intramolecular forces, it is a bond or an attraction within a molecule. Ibig sabihin sa loob ng molecule, like this HCl, sa loob po niya. And that defines the intra and the intermolecular forces. So as you can see from this picture, ayan nga, nasabi ko, this is the intra, this is the inter. Same with this, as you can see on the second picture, sinabi niya, A and B, the attraction between A and B pertains for the intra, and the attraction between the attraction between AB into another AB is intermolecular forces. Okay po. So, intermolecular forces sa dalawang compound, intramolecular forces sa isang compound or sa isang molecule. So, that is. So, we have different intramolecular forces. Disregard this slide. So, let us go with the types of intramolecular forces. These are included on your module. So, let me show you what are the different intramoleculars para intramolecular forces. So, we have ionic bond. So, bond formed completely by transferring of valence electrons. So, it's a bond between ionic bond. Okay? So, between metal and non-metal, which metal usually donates or transfer its electrons to a covalent bond. So, that's the reason meron tayong positive or may mga formal charges tayo positive kasi siya yung nag-donate, nag-lose siya ng electrons, at si chlorine ay naging negative kasi siya yung nag-gain ng electrons. Next is a covalent bond. So, we have identified this in chemistry 1. It is a bond between non-metal to non-metal where they have electronegativity. So, remind ko, ang electronegativity is ability of an atom to attract. Okay? Ito yung ability ng isang atom na makapag-attract. So, remember in a covalent bond, there is the so-called polar, polar and non-polar. So, where polar means equal sharing and non-polar means unequal sharing. So, nandito siya. So, a non-polar covalent bond is formed between same atoms with very similar electronegativities. The difference in electron bond is less than 0.5. So, meron po yan the difference. So, titingnan niyo po sa periodic table para malaman if it is polar and non-polar kapag 2 atoms lang po, 2 elements. Kapag ang computation po is let me just give it to you. So, it is out of this discussion. So, polar and non-polar, basta po it is unequal, non-polar is unequal sharing. So, in this part of the lesson, usually, we will identify it by its geometrical shape. And that's the reason pinadraw ko yung mga geometrical shape. And the dipole moment, remember the dipole moment or the arrows, kung saan ituturo ni arrow kung saan yung mas attracted or saan nagkakaroon ng attraction between the molecules. Okay? So, next is a polar covalent is formed when slightly different electronegatives. Ayan. So, kapag nagkaroon po, ito pala, lumabas na dito. So, pag nagkaroon ng difference from 0.5 to 1.9, actually, in some book, it is only up to 1.5 to 1.6 kasi pag nag-exceed na, that is under ionic bond. So, polar bond means it is an equal sharing. So, meaning merong nag-gain ng mostly electrons like this hydrochloric acid. As you can see, hydrogen has a partially positive and chlorine has a partially negative, and the arrow will be pointing to chlorine because chlorine has the most electronegativity, like the Cl pulls the shared electrons toward itself. So, papunta doon yung arrow pag nagkaroon lang tayo ng dipole moment. Okay? So, sa taas po niyan, ilalagay natin ng ganyang arrow. Sorry. Ayan po. Yan, napakaganda ng drawing. Okay, next. Yan po, katulad nito, partial negative charge, electrons towards, so dahil mas mataas ang electronegativity ni oxygen, kaya siya ay partially negative, at ang attraction lagi ay papunta kay oxygen. So, yan po. Yan yung tinatawag natin dipole moment. So, meaning, yung attraction ng electrons ay papunta or papalapit kay oxygen kasi mas mataas yung electronegativity niya. Kumbaga, sa isang tao, mas malakas, charming, mas malakas yung dating niya. Kaya mas maraming lumalapit na groups. Next po. Next, metallic bonding. We all know this one already. Metallic bonding is a bond occurs from metals or valence electrons that form a lattice form. The lattice is somewhere the formation of the electrons. So, referred as sea of electrons. So, usually in a metallic bond, ito yung mga pure metals such as gold, aluminum, alloys, brass, and bronze. So next, now let us go for with the intermolecular forces of attraction. So ulitin ko, intermolecular forces are much weaker daw than the intramolecular forces. So because we usually determine by its physical properties, by its boiling point, melting point, density, and enthalpies of fusion and vaporization. As we go with this discussion, we will know each by each. Ano, bakit yung reason ni intermolecular forces ay doon tayo mag-base. So, ito yung mga different types of intermolecular forces. First is a dipole-dipole interaction. So, usually, meron pang una is sa ion dipole. So, later, I will discuss na dun sa next slide ko. When we say dipole-dipole interaction, these are the forces that are partially positive and partially negative. So, usually, ito yung mga four compounds that has partially positive and partially negative. And when we identify ano ba yung mga compound na nagkakaroon ng partially positive and partially negative, so usually it is under a covalent bond. So for example, the case of polar covalent bonds as hydrogen chloride, so HCl, where hydrogen it is a partially positive and chlorine is a partially negative. So dipole is serve as the strongest intermolecular forces of attraction because they have some reasons that they hold each other together na hindi ganun kadali ma-break yung kanilang relationship, yung pag-break. Like this one. So we have the partially negative and partially positive, where this is the dipole-dipole interaction. So it's such thing, it need to break the dipole-dipole interaction. Since it is the strongest intermolecular forces, we need to have a great force or great energy to break this two. So kumbaga malakas na force ang kailangan natin para ma-breakthrough natin yung bond o yung attraction between the two molecular compounds. So, next, hydrogen bonding. What is the difference of hydrogen bonding if hydrogen bonding is also a part of dipole-dipole interaction? So, hydrogen bonding is one special kind of dipole-dipole interaction that only kumbaga exclusive lang siya into the hydrogen atom bonded to either oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine. So, pag nakakita kayo ng compound na may kabond ni hydrogen into nitrogen, into fluorine, or into an oxygen, automatically it is under hydrogen bonding. So, strongest din po siya dahil napakahirap nilang i-break through like water, H2O. Like this one is oxygen. So, napakadali bang mag-evaporate ni water? So, let us think. Pag hinayaan ba natin iwanan yung water on the table, thus the water will easily evaporates by a minute? No, diba? By an hour? No then. So, it takes time bago siya mag-evaporate. Not time, but also temperature. So, kailangan mainit. So, that's something to do with the boiling point. So, later on, we will discuss, or the next lesson, we will discuss this one. So, that is the next picture where you can see, this is the hydrogen bond of two water. Ayan, katulad ng two H2 or two water molecules. This also, it's HF or hydrofluoride or hydrofluoric acid, pwede siya. So, with this is the negative polar on the small, ayan na, siya. So, usually, they are the one under they are the one under hydrogen bonding. So, meron pa dyan si, with nitrogen. Okay? Next, a London dispersion force, or we can call it a van der Waals. So these are the weakest intermolecular forces that exist between all types of molecules. So usually this London dispersion is under non-polar. So meaning ito yung there sorry. It is polar. Sorry. It's polar meaning it has, tama. Sorry. Ulitin ko po. Sa London dispersion po, it is also under van der Waals, where it is of weakest intermolecular forces with all types of molecules, so whether ionic or polar or non-polar, but usually it appears on a definite type of covalent bonds. So, sa London dispersion po, kaya siya nagiging weak. So, nagkakaroon tayo ng momentary dipole. So, it means these electrons in a compound sometimes become distorted. So, if the elements or if the compound is shaped like this, so natas nandito ang electrons. If it's something with another compound na ganun, so mangyayari po is magiging distorted siya. So, ganito po yung mangyayari niya. So, it will be formed like this where the electrons will repel. So, lalayo siya. And the other one will become the momentarily. Yan, magiging ganyan po ang itsura niya. But still, they will be attracted. Yun nga lang, kaya siya weakest because it can be easily break. Kayang-kaya na lang paghiwalayin because the other electrons will be repelled. So, to have another idea, we have here the different types of intermolecular forces, where we have here the ion dipole. As I said, there is another intermolecular, the ion dipole, where you can see it is a formal charges which forms positive and negative. So, usually, ito yung ionic bond. So, nagkakaroon ng positive tsaka negative. Strongest intermolecular forces din siya if it is included in the choices if it's a type of intermolecular forces. In a dipole, where there is a partial charges under polar band. So, it meaning unequal sharing. So, hindi pantay yung pagkakashare, kaya nagkakaroon ng partial charges. And hydrogen bond, it is a bond na meron tayo kay nitrogen, fluorine, and oxygen. So, and the London dispersion or the van der Waals, where there is an induced dipoles, which is under non-polar. So, that is some with the type of intermolecular forces. So, tandaan pag partial charges or polar bond siya, it is a dipole. And kapag it is in hydrogen bond, merong bond between hydrogen or of nitrogen, fluorine, or oxygen. And if it is a London dispersion, it is in this dipoles, but this compound is under non-polar, meaning equal sharing. So, ang best example po nito ni London dispersion ay mga under ng complete yung kanilang valence electrons. These are the noble gases. So, the noble gases appear as its diatomic. When we say diatomic, so, for example, ni helium. Si helium po, nagiging diatomic siya. So, kapag siya mag-a-appear as a compound, so, magiging He2. Okay? So, if appears on a room with full of hydrogen helium, so, it can easily break like this helium. So, kapag nasa ibang temperature siya, nagpo-form into other type siya. It's either nagiging solid or nagiging liquid. Same with bromine. So, kapag nasa room temperature naman siya, nagiging liquid, if I'm not mistaken. So, sana hindi mali sa pagkakatanda ko. So, yun yung reason. So, yun yung mga example ko. So, kasi as we go through with our lesson, may isa-isa natin yung mga ganong example. Okay, so yun yung reason bakit katulad ni liquefied gas sa ating tangke, sa loob, it appears to a liquid, it appears to be a liquid, pero pag na-expose na siya into a room temperature, it will become a gas. So, ganun siya. So, that is London dispersion. Kaya ganun kabilis ma-break yung kanilang molecules. Ang dali nilang i-break kasi mabago lang yung temperature, mag-change na sila into a new form. It can be from liquid to solid and solid to liquid. So, connected siya with states of matter. Same with perfume. Nandun sa pinaka-metal yung makapal, yung malamig. Pag hinawakan natin, like mga axe spray, so yung mga ganun. So, usually, yun yung nagkakos ng pagbilis ng change from liquid become solid or liquid to gas. So like this one. So we have here the boron trifluoride. As you can see, the arrows are pointing to fluorine. So it means fluorine is more attract or more higher electronegativity than boron. That's the reason the arrow is pointing to the fluorine. So from this picture, as you can see, it shows you, as I said a while ago, it shows you 3 arrows pointing towards to fluorine. So from boron to fluorine, boron to fluorine, boron to fluorine. So it will have 3 arrows. So the arrows is pointing out palaba, papunta kay fluorine. If that happens, so walang isang same direction. So it is under unequal sharing. So, hindi equal dahil napunta lahat kay fluorine. So, iba-ibang direction. Hindi rin siya symmetrical. So, it is under polar bond. And if it is polar, so, anong type of intermolecular force siya? Okay, think of it. So, next, the NH3, where hydrogen is pointing to nitrogen, then hydrogen is pointing to nitrogen, and hydrogen is another pointing to nitrogen, where because nitrogen has a greater electronegativity than hydrogen, and if that happens, so pointing to one arrow sila papunta kay nitrogen, so it has an equal sharing, and if it has an equal sharing, so ano siya? So equal sharing, meaning non-polar, it is a London dispersion. So, hindi ka masulat. So, London dispersion. While this one, it is an equal sharing, unequal sharing. But it is polar, meaning it is a dipole intermolecular forces. Okay? So, that is the intermolecular forces. So, the next lesson we have with this question. Why do melting points and boiling points of a substance can be used as indicator of strength of intermolecular forces? So, like this one. So, liquid, example, iba-iba yung kanilang boiling point. So, iba-ibang temperature, nagbo-boil yung iba-ibang liquids. But we all know that in water, it always boil in a 100 degrees Celsius. How about in other type of liquid? So, yun yung reason bakit. Kaya, so I will show you the graph where you can see the intermolecular forces which is between the intramolecular which is within. So, ayan siya. Kung makikita nyo sa intermolecular may dispersion. Ito, weak type ng kanilang, ng kanyang, what you call this, the diagram which is showing you the increased size of polarizability. So, next lesson, and actually deeper lesson is malalaman natin. So, zero attraction is only possible with ideal gases. So, don't worry. Next lesson natin is madi-discuss natin one by one. Then, this one is the intermolecular forces of a diagram. Ayan, kung saan pupunta siya. Kapag polar molecules pa ang involved, pag no, it is a London dispersion. Kapag yes, it is a dipole-dipole. Kapag ito naman ay hydrogen atom bonds of nitrogen and fluorine, pag yes, it is an hydrogen bond. So, yun yung example. Pag ito naman ay may polar ions, ayun, ion dipole and ionic bonding. So, yun yung sinabi natin. Pag non-polar, it is London. Pag polar, it is dipole-dipole. And it is hydrogen bonding kapag may N, O, tsaka F. So, yun po ang intermolecular forces for our week 1. So, for those who are still questions, you can directly message me kung ano yung mga questions nyo. Because for the next lesson, we will having the So next lesson we will having the properties of liquid, if I'm not mistaken. Tama. Properties of liquid and intermolecular forces. So our next lesson, i-identify natin what are the different properties of liquid and how can we connect or the relationship of intermolecular solids. So bakit nag-act yung same property na yun? Ano yung meron sa anong meron yung molecules nun so in a type of a property of liquid. So that ends the PowerPoint of this intermolecular forces. So thank you and good night. Ayan po. So, for the last slide, sa makikita nyo rin po yan sa inyong module. So, yan yung pinagkakaiba-iba ng law ng dispersion, dipole, and hydrogen bonding. So, ito yung sinasabi kong induce, nagkakaroon ng induce. Ito naman yung partial charges. And this one is yung merong presence hydrogen and oxygen and chlorine. So, that is diagram. So, thank you and God bless.